basis.
Welcome to The Extra on KRDO News Radio, the show that connects you with the topics and issues and people that are important to you. And today, a very important person is here, Catherine Hammond, Hammond Law Group. Hi, Catherine.
Good morning, Renee.
It's good to always have you in. And today we are actually talking about a very important topic, and it can affect a lot of people. And it is being prepared, being ready when you have a loved one that is diagnosed with like Alzheimer's, dementia, because there's a lot that goes into it, isn't it? And you have a whole series, video series coming out on this, don't you?
Yes. I partnered with Kent Matthews, who many people in the community probably know, with the Area Agency on Aging. And we have created a video course for people with a loved one with Alzheimer's or other form of dementia, because it's such a complicated area and there's lots of information out there for people on how to manage some of the day-to-day things and about the disease. We really focused primarily on planning when you have a diagnosis, whether it's brand new or you're years into it. How do you think through all the things that may come up in the financial, legal, medical, housing, and emotional areas of what you're going to be dealing with? So,
because you don't want to just walk into those landmines, and it goes with everything, you know, but being prepared is even better.
Yes, and maybe even exponentially better when you have something like dementia that changes your entire world.
So let's start out and kind of list the issues that we're going to touch on today. Of course, planning ahead instead of reacting, being proactive, right?
Exactly. That makes it a much, much smoother experience. And we know, dementia is not an easy thing for the person who has it, nor for the people who love them.
Right.
So there's a lot that goes into it, but the smoother we can make it, if we can eliminate any unnecessary practical hiccups, that frees us up to just deal with the most important things and the emotional side of things.
Which is good and important, I think. And like you said in your next note, you said there's so many things to think about and deal with when they do have dementia, like you're talking, and you just kind of highlighted, which we're going to go into: financial, legal, medical, housing. But there's the unknowns, like we were talking about, the landmines.
Right. Most of the things that are going to come up on anybody's journey are not known. We don't know exactly how it's going to go because it goes differently for every single person.
It does, doesn't it? And something quirky is going to pop up, and you think you're ready for it, and you may not be.
Right. Like with every other area of life happens.
Right.
And we don't know what we don't know. So there are things that we know that we don't know. We don't know exactly how it's going to progress. We don't know exactly what kind of care they're going to need. But there are also things that we don't even realize that we don't know.
Right.
Makes it a really, really tricky area.
But that's why we have friends like you to help us through it. And again, we're going to look at the primary areas to think about, and we're going to kind of touch on some of them in the morning, is the financial aspect of it, the legal aspect of it, the medical aspect of it, housing. That's important.
Yes.
Because that's a full-time job, isn't it, when you're caring for someone with Alzheimer's or dementia, and then the emotional aspect of it.
Right.
So let's talk and we'll start on this before we have to go to the break, but let's start with caregivers.
Right. One of the things to get out of the way right up front is the fact that a lot of people don't consider themselves to be a caregiver.
Okay.
They're just somebody whose spouse has dementia or somebody whose parent has dementia. If you are in one of those situations, you are a caregiver of some sort. And it's interesting, when we went out to shoot this video course in North Carolina, I had a chance to spend some time with a dear friend who is helping with a family member's medical situation. And she's helping with that person and with other family members who are younger, still growing up, and so she's doing this with a lot of her time. But as she spent time with Kent and I talking the night before we started shooting the video course about how this goes for caregivers, she had this sudden revelation that she is a caregiver. she did not realize, even though she spends several days a week helping these family members and helping the family member who has the medical issues, she had not realized that she was a caregiver. And it was very interesting because as that light bulb went on for her, she felt a heaviness. It was a hard thing for her to admit, and that we try to protect ourselves from that because that meant she's in a hard, heavy situation that may go on for a long time. And people don't like to admit the reality of situations.
So is that kind of what you're saying is, yeah, that is an emotional piece of it. Obviously, like, okay, I'm not going to admit that my spouse has dementia and I'm not.
Right.
I'm just, that's my spouse.
Exactly. And it's hard for us to admit because we don't want to deal with that hard reality, like dealing with our own mortality.
Right.
And it's hard for us to admit to other people. And I just spent some time last week with somebody whose father-in-law was recently diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And mother-in-law doesn't want to tell anybody.
Oh, no.
And so we keep it secret. We think that we can handle it. We don't want to ask for help. We're proud. We're afraid maybe nobody will help anyway. And we think it's not going to be that bad and we can handle it. That independence thing that we do.
But we know probably the more help, the better, right? So that's
Absolutely.
So that's probably one of the first steps in all of this, isn't it, Catherine? Like, I am a caregiver and accepting that I am a caregiver and I'm providing care.
Yep. And just that one takes some processing.
I can only imagine. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the some of the other big primary things to think about when you have a loved one with dementia or Alzheimer's. We're talking with Catherine Hammond, Hammond Law Group. We'll be back on the Extra on KRDO News Radio. Welcome back to the Extra on KRDO News Radio. Today we're talking with Catherine Hammond, Hammond Law Group. She is doing a video series on what to do when a loved one has dementia. And it could be a new diagnosis of Alzheimer's or dementia, or it could be a diagnosis that is in, a few months in.
Yes, or even years.
Right. And you said one of the biggest things that you are seeing in helping folks prepare is the caregiver aspect, the emotional aspect of, I'm not a caregiver.
Right.
And that's a huge hurdle to get over.
Right. I'm just a wife whose husband is having memory problems.
Right.
Or maybe whose doctor said he has dementia. And admitting the reality of that is hard.
It is very hard. But then comes the other things that are pretty substantial. And you listed the primary things to think about. And again, you're going to cover all of this in your new video series that is coming out. But financial, legal, medical, housing, and emotional are the primary ideas you need to think about when preparing to prepare for some help someone who has dementia.
Exactly.
So let's talk about planning for financial issues, because I'm sure that is the number one piece.
Right. Money is a primary tool for what our lives are going to look like, right?
Right.
And so when somebody has dementia, the money is what determines what kind of care they're going to get. And particularly if we have a married couple and one spouse has dementia and one spouse is healthy, there are two people who, on a monthly basis, are going to be affected by the income situation. We need to make sure bills are covered. And then what kind of money is there for the spouse who has dementia, and what kind of money is there for the spouse who does not. So getting a handle on it is important, and it's time sensitive because there's so much more that we can do early on than if we wait years down the road until we've run out of money. And now spouse has to go into a nursing home or dad has to go into a nursing home.
And you weren't ready or prepared to possibly face that.
Exactly.
And I like one of your notes here. It's helped maintain the sanity of everybody in the family.
Absolutely.
To get your financial ducks in a row, basically.
Right. If you happen to be in a family where you had sanity in the first place. Right. Sorry.
Well, no.
We
all have those family members or more than one, right?
Right. Well, and for the caregiver, let's say for the spouse, or if you're an adult child, money can also be a tool to help you get through this in terms of...
So if you're a caregiver or a family member or...
Absolutely. So can you hire somebody who will come in and give you a brief respite several times a week. My dad has needed some in-home care. My stepmom takes great care of him, but he needs a lot of care every hour of the day.
Well, and your stepmom needs a break too.
Exactly. And so they have somebody come in 5 days a week to help, but even once a week or several times a week, and that, of course, takes money. And then what are the other little things that you can be doing for yourself? Massages, little trips, little weekend getaways, whatever it might be. Money is a tool for all of that.
So where should people start in starting to think about a financial piece when it comes to being ready for someone
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I can't form sentences today, Catherine. So where should they start? Where should they start thinking and putting their financial stuff together?
It starts with just gathering information about what the current situation is.
Okay.
So figuring out where all of the documents are and what kinds of assets are out there, what kind of income is out there. So figuring out, and you might have to search in filing cabinets, you might have to watch for statements in the mail,
Right.
you might have to, get online records. There are a variety of places that you might have to look just to get the basic information. And then you want to start organizing that information. Figure out what you have as far as real estate, as far as investments, as far as retirement accounts, all of the assets that you have. And, some people have other little funky things, gold collections.
Yeah, right.
A variety of kinds of assets that people might have. And then figure out who are the financial advisors and chat with them.
So you do want to meet, obviously, with a financial professional.
If possible.
Okay.
Now, if you don't have legal authority over your loved one's finances, you're going to have to get permission from them to chat with the financial professional.
And we're going to touch on that in the legal side of everything because we know that can be a tricky slope, right?
Absolutely. So, and then evaluating exactly what you have to see how much you have in assets and how much you have in income.
And also you need to look at, and I don't know if this becomes an issue, but I would think most companies are like, hey, you want to give us money? That's fine. But if there's bills associated that you need to cover, like how do you arrange to pay those bills and make sure they're covered?
Right. That was, for my mom, that was one of the first signs that there was something awry when she was developing Alzheimer's. She did not pay the mortgage for several months.
Wow,
she did
and
not
nobody
pay.
knew.
Right. She didn't pay the utilities for several months. And because she was single, there wasn't anybody who was being notified about these things. So it also showed up in her work. And so she had been put on disability from her job. But once that happened and she was just home, there wasn't anybody else to check in on these things. So you need a plan for how on earth the bills are going to get paid if somebody is losing their ability to manage those kinds of complicated details.
So when we come back from the news break, let's talk about planning for that future and then getting into some of the legal aspects that you need to be prepared for too. Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
We're talking with Catherine Hammond, Hammond Law Group. We'll continue next on the Extra on KRDO News Radio. Welcome back to the Extra on KRDO News Radio. We're talking with Catherine Hammond, Hammond Law Group, at a very important topic that can affect so many people. I can't, and I don't know if in your series, Catherine, you guys looked at the number of people that are diagnosed with dementia or Alzheimer's or something like that, but I bet it's a very large number.
There are millions of people with dementia. So, and Alzheimer's is the most common, but there are lots of other forms.
Variations,
of dementia.
right?
Yep.
Absolutely.
So millions and millions. And so there are millions and millions and millions of people with a loved one with dementia because each person represents a number of people who love them.
Absolutely. And that's why you you've put together this video series, what to do when your loved one has dementia.
Which will be released in late August.
That's
so
fantastic.
If there are people who are interested in details about all of the things that we're talking about, you can go to the caregivercourse.com.
Okay.
And just put in your name and we'll send you an email when it's all ready.
Perfect. Caregivercourse.com. And really quick, if folks are just joining us, the top 5 things that you listed, primary things to think about when dealing with helping a loved one with dementia. And then we were talking about financial, but it's financial, legal, medical, housing, and emotional. Those are the top 5 that kind of been broken down into.
Right.
And we were talking about planning for financial stuff before the break, and you kind of how to get started, getting organized, gathering information, but how do you plan for the future on the financial side? Because as we know, anything can happen.
Right.
So how do you plan?
So on the financial side, one of the things that you want to look at is income.
Right.
What income do you know that you have? What income might you have in the future in terms of Social Security benefits, retirement benefits, that kind of thing? If your loved one is still working, there are some delicate issues around that. Will they still be able to work for a while? What does all of that look like? So income is one side of things, and then there's expenses. And one of the biggest potential expenses is housing and care. So exploring all of your options about keeping somebody in the home versus
right.
And just taking care of them yourself, keeping them in the home and having somebody else come in and help, or having them live elsewhere where somebody else is caring
where it's
for
like
them.
almost a full-time care.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
And so we can talk about that. Maybe next time we'll talk about some of the issues related to that and how people make those decisions. But that has a huge impact on the financial side of things.
It really does, yeah.
How do you pay for all of that? So one of the things that you need to look at right away is long-term care insurance. Does my loved one have that? And if so, what kind of coverage?
What? Yeah, exactly. What does it cover? Okay, they do have long-term care insurance,
Right.
but what exactly does it cover? Because sometimes I know when you get into the details of that, it's like, oh, it doesn't cover that.
Right, exactly. And then what kind of government benefits are they eligible for? If they served in the military, and particularly if they served during a wartime period, they might be eligible for some special VA-related long-term care benefits like the aid and attendance benefit, we call it. So that's something to check into. And then also Medicaid. And people get Medicaid and Medicare confused. Medicare is the basic medical plan for people who are over age 65. Medicaid is what would pay for the nursing home if you're eligible.
Okay.
But it requires being impoverished and meeting certain criteria in order to qualify for Medicaid. So we go through the details of that in our course so that you can figure out, even if you're not currently eligible for Medicaid, are there ways to become eligible from a financial perspective?
And correct me if I'm wrong. I think I heard this somewhere. I don't know. And I could be completely making it up. But is there a benefit for caregivers as well?
A Medicaid benefit?
Yeah, some kind of benefit. I don't know. I heard somebody one time go, well, as a caregiver, I get a benefit. I don't know if that's...
Probably a Social Security benefit, yes.
Okay.
So, and all of that gets tricky.
Right.
Yeah, so all kinds of things to check into.
Okay.
And make sure that you know all of the benefits that you're entitled to.
Well, and I'm so glad you have a whole, because we are only, skimming the surface here. So that's why you have this whole course, video course that you're putting together. Now, let's hop over to legal issues. And of course, a lot of the financial, I'm sure, would go into the legal issues.
Absolutely. They're tied together.
Very much. So what are some of the legal things that being aware of? Because we've talked about this before in the past. Somebody suddenly has a medical issue or something and you can't access anything. You can't, you know what I mean? And I'm sure some of that can kind of trickle into this as well.
It does. And so if somebody has any kinds of signs of dementia or dementia diagnosis, I guess the overarching principle is getting a handle on the legal affairs is time sensitive. Because if they still have the capacity to sign documents now,
you need them.
Now
to do
is
that.
the time
Okay.
to sign the documents.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so it's all about capacity. There are some different kinds of capacity that you need to understand because what you need to do estate planning documents is different from what you need to sign contracts.
Right,
and
they're
things like
totally
that.
different.
Right.
Becoming not just the caregiver, but in charge of financials, legal, everything like that.
Exactly.
So is this kind of like with the financial, you need to start gathering your information and everything like that?
Absolutely. See what's in place right now.
Okay.
Whether there's a basic will in place, a financial power of attorney, medical directives, and perhaps a revocable living trust. Figure out what you have in place right now, and then take them. Now, again, this is a tricky thing, and so we go into some of the details of it. You want to have them reviewed by an attorney. Now,
what legal documents you have
exactly.
now. Okay, and see if they cover what you need.
Exactly. And if they're up to date, if they might just need to be updated. And so if this is mom, you can't just call a lawyer and take her documents in. So it's tricky to navigate that. If you're married and you have joint documents, then you can have that conversation. But ideally, you'll want to take your loved one with dementia with you.
And hopefully, again, they have the capacity to be a part of that conversation.
And that's something that the attorney will be able to determine. Now, let me just say, when you think about who to go to for this, you don't have to go back to whoever drafted the will and the power of attorney 25 years ago. So
are there kind of different, and I don't want to say specialty attorneys that can focus on certain aspects of this, or?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
And I'll say, there are definitely probate attorneys who focus more on the death side of things. They do wills, they do the probate after death, they, of course, do a financial power of attorney. But they don't work as intimately with people in an elder law context where they're dealing with the issues that come up when somebody's disabled. And those issues are very different from the issues that come up when we die.
Right.
So you want somebody who's intimately acquainted with what kinds of things can come up if you become disabled and how to minimize those legal challenges while you still can.
So you kind of want it, like you're saying, a well-rounded attorney, again, that is probate law, but elder law as well.
Right.
And can address all of the issues.
Exactly.
Okay. And let's see.
Powers of attorney.
Powers of attorney. I was just going to get there because that is if you don't have those in place, you could be in trouble, couldn't you?
Right.
In big trouble.
And powers of attorney have to be very comprehensive, and they typically have to be very recent. A lot of institutions require that they be signed within the last 6 to 12 months, maybe up to 5 years of when you need them. So knowing exactly what kind of power of attorney you have and when it was signed and who all will accept it on the front end is important. There are a lot of institutions that will only accept a POA on their own form.
Really?
And then you're kind of out of luck when mom becomes incapacitated. So
I didn't know that. They won't just accept any power of attorney.
Correct.
Wow.
There are a number of institutions that won't just accept any power of attorney.
Wow, I didn't know that.
And it's funny, in Colorado, we have a law that specifically says institutions can't decline a power of attorney just because.
But they
have to have a good reason. Right. I've seen it come up over and over again. And typically, if you get a lawyer involved, you can work things out eventually. Unless it's related to real estate, then they do have the legal right to decline it just because. So.
Interesting. And then when we come back, let's save conservatorship, guardianship, and some other legal things when we come back from the break.
Awesome.
We're talking with Catherine Hammond, Hammond Law Group, on the Extra on KRDO News Radio. Welcome back to the Extra on KRDO News. We're talking with Catherine Hammond, Hammond Law Group. She has an entire new series coming out. It's a video series called What to Do When a Loved One Has Dementia, which, like we've talked about, is something that touches so many people. I mean, so many people, millions and millions of people. So that's why you're doing this series. And you were personally affected by Alzheimer's, dementia in your family.
I was. My mom was officially diagnosed when I was very young, put on disability when I was away at college. And I put her in a nursing home when I was 22, started that process. So.
And that's where your path of becoming an elder law and a lawyer, stuff like that, in this area started.
Exactly. Yeah.
And now you help people.
Go ahead.
Now you help people.
I do. And I'm not the only one in this community who helps people. And so for the Caregiver Course, I partnered with the amazing Kent Matthews, with
Yeah.
the Area Agency on Aging, who spends his days, he has the most ridiculous background as a social worker, has helped people with so many issues, particularly related to aging and dying, and now spends his days coaching family caregivers. So we partnered together to create a video course called the Caregiver Course that will be truly helpful to people for planning all of those legal, financial, housing, medical, and emotional areas.
Aspects of it. And before we went to break, we were talking about, and we've really focused this morning on the financial and legal, and they go hand in hand. But before we went to break, we were going to touch on the conservatorship and guardianship.
Right.
And that could become an issue.
Yes. So if you don't have the right documents in place and your loved one becomes incapacitated, if they own real estate or if they have certain kinds of assets where you need somebody to be able to sign off on them, it may mean that you end up having to set up a conservatorship and or guardianship. Guardianship would be for making medical decisions, getting them into a nursing home, that kind of thing. Conservatorship would be managing the money. So in the course, we go through all the details of that.
And I see here you have big notes and exclamation points about, do a lot of people look for resources online? Is that kind of what we're talking about here? They go for online and look for resources to try and handle this stuff.
Oh my goodness, yes. I had a situation a couple of years ago. We had somebody come in who was having some challenges with the power of attorney that they had signed. Husband had a progressive disease, and they had known several years earlier that he got the diagnosis. They knew that he was going to progress and be unable to manage his own affairs. And so they wanted to be proactive. They went to the internet and printed off a power of attorney so that when he became incapacitated, the wife would be able to deal with
Right,
things.
yeah. But as you touched on before the break, lots of places don't accept just a power of attorney.
And you have to beware if you're trying to do your own legal work. There's a reason why lawyers go to school for years and then practice for years, because there are a lot of things to understand. This particular couple downloaded a power of attorney off of the internet, didn't want to spend the money on an attorney, and they were now sitting in our office a couple of years ago because the form that they had signed had some fine print that said it's only good as long as husband maintains his capacity.
Oh, no. And
it was not what we call durable.
Oh, no.
So minor little details like that in the fine print can ruin the entire thing. Spend the money, talk to an attorney. It's much, much less expensive and less intrusive if you do that on the front end than if you end up with a problem down the road.
Because it sounds like you had quite the web to untangle after that.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's tell everybody what are some, because we only have a couple minutes left, before we have to wrap up. And then we'll continue this to the next month because there's so many topics, and then we'll talk about the course again that's coming out. Give everybody really quick a summary of important legal documents that they may need to get together or start pulling now or thinking about.
Absolutely, and this one is easy. A financial, durable power of attorney.
Keyword.
Medical directives, living will and healthcare power of attorney.
Okay.
And there are different variations on that in different states. There are also some medical directives that are more global, like the 5 Wishes document. So, financial power of attorney, medical directives, universal HIPAA release.
Yes, we've talked about that several times.
Yep, can get your medical information.
Right.
Everybody needs a will, last will and testament. And then, if at all possible, particularly if you own any assets, having a revocable living trust in place and having it properly funded can change the entire experience from a how hard is this going to be on my loved one's perspective.
Okay. And again, let's talk the series, the course. It will be released later this month, but what's the website again that folks can go to get more information?
It's the Caregiver Course. And then we have, of course, our regular estate planning workshops this Saturday at 10 o'clock.
You're so smart. I was just going to get to that. So this Saturday, you were saying?
Yes, this Saturday at 10 o'clock, we have a workshop up at the Hilton Garden Inn on Briargate. But nice, across the street is the Bark at Briargate.
How fun is that?
Which we love our pets.
Yes, we do.
And yeah, if you come into our office on Fridays, you'll meet a dog or 2 or 5. So
because it's bring your four-legged friend Friday.
Yes,
Friday. That's
it
awesome.
is. And we have clients who bring their 4-legged friends, and we love that.
That's awesome.
So Bark at Briargate, don't miss that on Saturday. And then again, September 13th and 16th, we have more workshops.
Thank you so much, Catherine Hammond. And again, the series is called What to Do When a Loved One Has Dementia, and it's the caregiverscourse.com. Catherine Hammond, Hammond Law Group, thank you so much, and we'll chat with you next month.
Wonderful.
And coming up tomorrow, it's quite the craze that's going on in our community. It's called 719 Rocks. Have you guys seen about it? We're going to talk about that tomorrow on The Extra on KRDO News Radio.